Dr. Zarkwil had seen many horrors in his time as chief medic aboard the Viekesh Hope, an interstellar hospital ship. He had treated acid-blooded Thraxians, venomous Dargol warriors, and even a sentient fungus colony that nearly consumed the entire surgical ward. But nothing, not war, not plague, not even the eerie silence of space, had ever filled him with such pure, primal terror as the unconscious human lying before him. It was massive, at least 2 meters tall, its muscular form stretched out unnervingly across the examination table. Even sedated, its powerful limbs seemed ready to snap bones and tear flesh with ease. Its exposed skin showed scars, not from simple accidents, but from battles. Zarkwil could practically feel the violence radiating off its body. The assembled medical team of various alien species hovered anxiously, their quivering tendrils, frills, and mandibles betraying their unease. None of them moved to touch the creature. Chief Medic, a junior medic, whispered through their translator, their eye stalks swiveling toward Zarkwil. "Are we truly expected to treat this thing?" Zarkwil swallowed, forcing his bioluminescent skin to remain neutral. The sight of the human alone was enough to trigger an instinctive fear response in his kind, a deeply ingrained terror of apex predators, passed down through millennia of evolution. "We have no choice," he said, his voice steady despite the shudder in his forelimbs. "It is injured. It requires treatment." But in truth, he was uncertain. Humans were a recent addition to the galactic community, their sudden appearance in the stars sending shockwaves through every species. They were strange, contradictory beings, capable of great kindness and unshakable loyalty, and yet, at their core, they were killers, apex predators, deathworlders. Every civilization that encountered them learned the same, terrifying truth. Humans were designed to survive, no matter what the universe threw at them. And now, one of these beings lay in Zarkwil's med bay, injured, vulnerable, and they had no idea how to treat it. ##### The problem with predators. "Vitals are erratic," muttered Rilsha, a serpentine enthermetic, her scales shifting uneasily. "Its body is regulating itself, but the readings are unnatural." Zarkwil examined the data pad, his anxiety deepening. The human's heart rate spiked unpredictably, slowing to an eerie crawl one moment before hammering with furious intensity the next. It had suffered a deep laceration along its torso, yet it had barely bled. A lesser species would have succumbed to shock, but this human had somehow remained conscious long enough to fight off its attackers before finally collapsing. "What if we just wait?" suggested Bjornake, a timid avian medic. His feathers puffed slightly, his claws clicking against the floor. "Its body might heal itself. We know their regenerative abilities are—" "No," Zarkwil cut him off. "This wound is deep. The tissue damage alone would cripple most beings. If we leave it untreated, it could become infected." That was the other problem. Infection. Humans were bacterial war zones. Their bodies housed trillions of microbes, many of which were deadly to other species. Their immune systems were monstrous, designed to adapt and overcome anything, but that same trait made them dangerously unpredictable. Standard antiseptics wouldn't work. Alien antibiotics could disrupt their delicate microbial balance. Even their own medicines, what little the Galactic Council had obtained, were barely understood. Zarkwil had seen reports. Some alien medics had tried treating human infections in the past, only to cause catastrophic failures. In one case, a human skin peeled away in sheets due to an incorrect antibiotic. In another, a wound treated with standard regenerative gel sealed over an active infection, turning the entire limb necrotic. No. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. But what could they do? ##### A dangerous solution. Zarkwil turned to the assembled team, forcing his voice to remain level. "We require assistance." "From who?" Rilsha asked. "Who in this galaxy has experience treating these?" Zarkwil hesitated. The answer was as strange as it was obvious. Another human. Silence. Uncomfortable shifting. Even speaking of these creatures made the room feel smaller. Zarquil accessed the hospital ship's database, searching for any human medical personnel. There were none aboard, of course. The Galactic Council was still hesitant to allow humans in sensitive positions. But there was one potential option. An obscure file appeared, containing a name, a brief record, and a title that was not what he expected. Dr. Evelyn Carter, veterinary specialist. His mandibles clicked in confusion. A veterinarian? That couldn't be right. He checked the records again. This was the only human doctor currently in their sector. The only one within reach. Zarquil's bioluminescence flickered with uncertainty, but he had no choice. Summon her, he ordered. Hashtag, a different kind of doctor. The human arrived several hours later via emergency shuttle. Dr. Evelyn Carter was smaller than expected, but no less intimidating. Her body was compact, efficient, coiled like a predator prepared to spring at any moment. She strode into the med bay without hesitation, her boots striking the floor with unsettling confidence. The alien medic stared. She was unarmored. No exosuit. No protective gear. Not even a weapon. Just a simple uniform, sleeves rolled up, revealing her forearms, her bare skin exposed in an environment filled with pathogens and unknown dangers. Zarquil's mandibles twitched. Either she was insane, or she truly feared nothing. Her sharp, blue eyes scanned the room before landing on the unconscious human. "This the patient?" she asked. The room remained silent. She exhaled. "All right. What do we know?" Zarquil forced himself to speak. Severe laceration. No substantial blood loss. Possible internal damage. We have been unable to assess proper treatment due to... He hesitated. "Because you don't know how to handle a predator," she finished for him. He stiffened, but she wasn't wrong. Carter approached the patient without hesitation, gloved hands moving with practiced ease. She checked the wound, prodding the exposed muscle with her fingers, completely unfazed. The other medics recoiled at her casual handling of the injured apex predator. After a moment, she looked up, an amused smirk crossing her face. "This isn't much different from stitching up an injured tiger," she mused. Zarquil blinked. "A what?" "A tiger. Big cat. Apex predator from Earth." She gestured at the unconscious human. "They're tough, but they still break." She pulled out a case of instruments. Human medical tools, foreign and slightly unnerving in their brutal simplicity. No nanite injectors. No biogel sprays. Just needles. Threads. Blades, Zarquil felt a chill. This was primitive. This was barbaric. But somehow, it felt right. Carter looked at the gathered medics, her expression calm, controlled. "All right, boys," she said. "Let me show you how to treat an apex predator." And with that, she began. Dr. Evelyn Carter worked fast. With the confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before, she moved around the unconscious human, pulling out surgical tools that looked terrifyingly crude to the assembled alien medics. No nanite-assisted tissue reconstruction. No advanced regenerative patches. Just metal instruments, thread, and a sharp blade. Zarquil's skin pulsed a nervous blue as he watched her slice into the human's flesh with deliberate precision. The wound had already sealed somewhat. Humans, he now realized, clotted fast, but Carter reopened it without hesitation. Brnak let out an involuntary squawk. Why would you make the wound worse?" Carter barely glanced up. "Because if I don't, it'll trap bacteria inside. That's how you get sepsis." Zarquil flicked his mandibles. "And you're certain you know which bacteria are dangerous?" The human gave a dry chuckle. "Buddy, I've spent half my career sticking my hands inside the guts of predators covered in bacteria far worse than this." She gestured at the unconscious patient. This is nothing. Nothing." The alien medics shared uneasy glances. How could she be so calm handling an apex predator? They had spent hours debating how to approach this creature without triggering a violent reaction, Yet here she was, slicing into its flesh like it was a routine procedure. Maybe for her it was. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag a dangerous kind of knowledge. As Carter worked, she spoke. Not to herself, but to them. All right, lesson 1. She began, stitching the muscle fibers back together with actual thread, her hands as steady as a machine's. Predators like this? They're built for injury. Their bodies expect damage. That means pain tolerance is through the roof. She tied a suture knot, her movements efficient and practiced. You ever see a human keep moving after breaking a limb? She asked. I have. Had a guy come into my clinic once, arm bent backward, completely shattered, and you know what he said? The aliens leaned in slightly. Carter grinned. Think I can still drive? Björnek made a horrified chirp. Rilsha coiled her tail tighter around herself. Zarquil, to his own surprise, found himself both disturbed and intrigued. Carter continued. Lesson 2. Infection control. Most species are sterile inside. Humans? Not even close. Their entire system is teeming with bacteria, most of it harmless, but some of it lethal. You screw up, you won't notice until it's too late. She reached into her kit, pulling out a small bottle. That's why I use this. Zarquil squinted at the label. Ethanol 70%. Alcohol, she clarified. Kills the bad stuff. Doesn't mess up their natural flora too much. Rilsha flicked her tongue. Surely, there are more sophisticated antiseptics. Oh, definitely. But you lot don't seem to have anything that won't melt human skin. She smirked. So, we keep it simple. Simple. That word again. Zarquil felt his unease shift into something else. A realization. Human medicine wasn't primitive. It was adaptable. They weren't using crude tools because they lacked better options. They were using them because their species could survive without advanced technology. Because their bodies could endure, even under the worst conditions. It was terrifying. It was brilliant. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag fear. Reconsidered. Carter worked for another 30 minutes, her hands never faltering. She closed the final stitch, then leaned back, stretching. There. Good as new. He'll be up in a few hours. The medics just stared. Zarquil finally spoke. That is all. She wiped her hands. What? You were expecting fireworks? He hesitated. I was expecting difficulty. Carter shrugged. I mean, it is difficult. But treating an apex predator? It's all about understanding how they work. She gestured at the patient. Humans are built for damage. But more than that, they're built to recover. You just have to respect that process. Work with it, not against it. The medics processed this in silence. Then Björnek, still looking rattled, let out a nervous chirp. If they're so good at recovering, why do they even need doctors? Carter's smirk softened into something more thoughtful. Because surviving and living aren't the same thing. That, more than anything, made Zarquil pause. For the first time since this ordeal began, he looked at the human not as a terrifying predator, but as something else. Something complex. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag a new perspective. The human on the table stirred. A soft groan escaped them. Carter stood, stepping back, arms crossed. Welp. Here comes the fun part. Zarquil's bioluminescence pulsed yellow. Fun part. The patient's eyes fluttered open, then snapped wide, locking onto the aliens surrounding them. Their pupils dilated. Their breathing spiked. A predator awakening in unknown territory. Surrounded. Wounded. Cornered. Zarquil braced for an explosion of violence. For flailing limbs, thrashing muscle, a desperate attempt to fight their way free. But before the human could move, Carter snapped her fingers. Hey. Focus. The human's gaze shot to her. She gave them a firm, measured look. You're fine. Wounded, but stitched up. Don't do anything stupid. For a second, the human remained tense, body coiled for a fight. Then, slowly, their shoulders loosened. Their breathing slowed. Doc, they croaked. Carter smirked. Yeah. You're not dead. You're welcome. A weak chuckle. Damn. Guess I owe you a drink. Zarquil could only stare. The moment Carter spoke, the predator calmed. She hadn't subdued them with drugs, hadn't restrained them. She had simply understood them, treated them like one of her own. And just like that, everything Zarquil thought he knew about humans, about predators, began to change.
The human patient, who identified himself as Lieutenant Callum Hayes, sat up groggily on the examination table, rolling his shoulders as though he hadn't just been stitched back together with thread and needles. Zarquil couldn't look away. It defied everything he understood about trauma. The pain alone should have left the human incapacitated, yet Hayes flexed his fingers, stretched his neck, and blinked the grogginess from his eyes as though he had merely woken from a nap. His kind were terrifying. But Carter? She was unshaken. "Take it slow, Hayes," she said, arms crossed. "I don't need you ripping open my stitches." Hayes gave a weak chuckle, wincing as he pressed a hand to his torso. "Didn't think I was bad enough to need a vet." "You weren't," she replied, smirking. "But someone had to show these guys how to handle a proper predator." Hayes glanced around at the assembled alien medics, all still watching him like he might suddenly lunge for their throats. "Yeah," he murmured. "I can tell." Zarquil felt a flash of embarrassment. It was true, they had treated Hayes like a volatile animal, rather than a sentient being in need of medical care. But how could they not? The moment he had regained consciousness, he had scanned the room for exits. His body had coiled for combat. He had smelled like blood and adrenaline, like something honed through evolutionary warfare. Even sitting there, clearly still recovering, he looked dangerous. Yet Carter remained completely at ease. She had walked into a room of terrified alien doctors and taken control. She had treated the human's wounds not as a delicate, impossible challenge, but as something routine. And now Hayes, an apex predator, listened to her like an obedient packmate. Zarquil's bioluminescence flickered with curiosity. Oh. ### lessons from a Deathworlder. Carter must have noticed Zarquil's expression, because she turned to him with a knowing smirk. "You've got questions, don't you, Doc?" Zarquil hesitated, then nodded. "Many?" She pulled up a stool and gestured for him to sit. "All right. Ask away." The other medics shifted nervously, but Zarquil couldn't resist the opportunity. He settled across from her, mandibles twitching in thought. He pointed at Hayes. "His body should not be functional after such injury." Carter shrugged. "Like I said before, humans are built for damage. But it's not just physical. It's mental too." She leaned forward. "Where I come from, you don't get to panic when things go wrong. You get hurt? You keep moving. You lose blood? You grit your teeth and push through. Hell, some people even fight through gunshots." Bjarnake let out a strangled squawk. Zarquil tried to process that. "And you were trained to handle creatures with similar biology?" Carter chuckled. "You're thinking about it the wrong way." She tapped her temple. "I don't just treat humans. I treat survivors. Doesn't matter if it's a war dog, a tiger, or some poor bastard who crash-landed in the middle of a jungle. The rules are the same." She spread her hands. "Predators don't expect to be helped. They expect to fight. They expect pain. You show fear? They get defensive. You hesitate. They assume you're weak. But if you approach them with confidence, like you belong there, like you're in control, they'll listen." Zarquil's bioluminescence pulsed in realization. It wasn't just that Carter understood humans. She understood predators. ### rewriting medical protocols. Rilsha finally spoke, coiling her tail uneasily. "Then how do we?" She hesitated. "How do we apply this knowledge?" Carter rubbed her chin, thoughtful. "Well, first, stop treating humans like they're made of glass. You try to coddle them, you'll just piss them off." She gestured at Hayes. "Second, understand that humans need to be active in their own recovery. They don't do well with being stuck in a bed, helpless. It messes with their heads." Hayes grumbled. "Preach." Carter continued. "And third, if you need to treat one, talk to them like they're a soldier, not a patient. Give them orders. Be direct. Don't baby them. You'll get way better compliance that way." Zarquil absorbed this carefully. It was so different from how they treated other species. Most patients required calm, gentle reassurance. But humans? They needed to be challenged, tested, given control over their own healing process. It was a fundamental shift in their approach. And it was completely alien to them. ### the future of intergalactic medicine. Hayes swung his legs over the edge of the table, rubbing his stitched wound. "So what now? Do I get a lollipop and a sticker for being a good patient?" Carter snorted. "You get a bill?" Hayes groaned dramatically, but Zarquil barely noticed. He was still replaying everything in his mind. This encounter had changed him. Changed the way he saw his own field, his own fear. Humans weren't just apex predators. They were apex survivors. And if they were going to be part of the galactic community, then the rest of the universe needed to learn how to treat them. Zarquil exhaled deeply, then straightened his posture. "Dr. Carter," he said, "would you be willing to assist us in updating our medical protocols for human patients?" Carter raised a brow. "You offering me a job, Doc?" "I am offering you an opportunity," he corrected, "to revolutionize intergalactic medicine." Carter grinned. "Well," she said, cracking her knuckles. "When you put it that way?" Zarquil stood at the head of the medical amphitheater, his bioluminescence flashing a controlled shade of pale yellow, the color of anticipation. The room was filled with alien physicians of every kind, their appendages poised over data pads, their gazes locked onto the central surgical platform. At its center stood Dr. Evelyn Carter. Behind her was a large holo display, showcasing the revised protocols for treating human patients, a direct result of the knowledge she had imparted to the terrified medical teams after treating Lieutenant Hayes. It had taken weeks of collaboration, of unlearning old assumptions and replacing them with new truths. Today, for the first time in galactic history, those protocols would be demonstrated live. Carter exhaled slowly, adjusting the collar of her lab coat. "All right, people," she said, voice carrying effortlessly across the hall. "Let's get started." The first step into the unknown. The subject was another human patient, a soldier from the diplomatic fleet who had suffered a fractured femur during a training accident. He was already sedated, but Carter wasn't just here to demonstrate the procedure. She was here to teach the approach. The alien physicians crowded closer, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. Zarquil could sense their unease. Treating a human with intentional precision, rather than cautious hesitation, was still foreign to them. Carter, as always, remained unshaken. "You've all seen the theory," she said, sliding on a pair of gloves. "Now you get to see it in practice." She gestured toward the patient. "Lesson 1. Stop hesitating. Humans can take a hit. The worst thing you can do is delay treatment because you're afraid of hurting them." Her hands moved swiftly, making the necessary incision to expose the fractured bone. There was no unnecessary commentary, no pause to second-guess. Just action. The aliens watched, transfixed. Lesson 2, Carter continued, working seamlessly with Zarquil, who assisted her. Pain is not the enemy, loss of function is ***. She worked quickly, securing the fracture with a titanium rod. No nanites, no self-repair gel, just solid mechanical reinforcement. You're not looking to make the injury vanish instantly. You're helping their body handle it while it fixes itself. Zarquil nodded, his hands moving with a confidence he hadn't realized he possessed. A month ago he would have balked at this. But now he understood. He had learned. Breaking barriers, one lesson at a time. The procedure continued flawlessly, and for the first time the alien physicians weren't frozen in fear. They asked questions. They leaned in. They learned. Bjernike, who had once trembled at the thought of touching a human patient, now observed Carter's suturing method with keen interest. Rilsha, who had recoiled at the idea of trusting a human's insane pain tolerance, now murmured in quiet fascination about how muscle fibers were aligning beneath Carter's careful stitching. Zarquil felt something shift in the room. It was not just a lesson in treating humans. It was a lesson in understanding them. What had once been fear had transformed into respect. The final suture was placed. Carter leaned back, wiping her brow. "And that," she said, peeling off her gloves, "is how you treat a human without losing your mind." Silence. Then applause. Not the polite, uncertain clapping of those who merely witnessed something interesting, but the genuine acknowledgement of something revolutionary. Zarquil turned to Carter. "Doctor," he said, mandibles twitching. "You have fundamentally changed how we see human medicine." Carter smirked. "Yeah, well, that's what happens when you call a vet instead of a doctor." A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. But underneath it all was something deeper. Something permanent. The galaxy had taken its first step into understanding humanity, not as a danger but as a unique, resilient force. And it had all started because one vet had the courage to treat an apex predator like just another patient. Epilogue. A new role. Weeks later, Carter stood in Zarquil's office, skimming a data pad filled with official documentation. "You're really making this official, huh?" she mused, tilting the pad toward him. "Chief Human Medical Consultant?" Zarquil's bioluminescence flickered. "I believe you've more than earned it." She exhaled, shaking her head. Hell of a career shift. He tilted his head. Will you accept? She looked at the datapad for a long moment. Then she grinned. Well, she said, signing her name at the bottom, it's not every day you get to rewrite the damn rules of medicine.